Good morning, everyone. Nau mai haere mai koutou kua tai mai nei mō tēnei hui. Ngā mihi kua ki mātou pōmahi me mātou manuhiri, marunga Zoom hoki. Kei te kōrero au i te reo Māori ki te honoi te ao Māori ki te whakamana te riti o Waitangi. I speak in te reo Māori to respect Maori and to give mana to the treaty of Waitangi. Anei taku Karakia poto is a short Karakia. Manakitia tēnei hui, manakitia tēnei rōpū, manakitia mātou whānau, huri noa i te motu, huri noa i te ao hurihuri. Guide our meeting, guide our, protect our group. Look over our family who are around the land and in fact over the world also. Manakitia ngā kaupapa o te rā. Arahina ngā whiti kōrero kei Waianganui a mātou. Arahina ngā whakaro kei Waianganui a mātou. Arahina ngā pātai, arahina ngā ture nei kia puta ai te marama. Tihei te Māori o te ora. Tēnā koutou. Right. Got some scribbles over the apologies on that. We've got David Wilson's on Zoom, Councillor Faulkner and Councillor Hughes are on Zoom, and no apologies. So that's good. Any declarations of interest? No. Okay, we'll go to confirmation of the non-confidential minutes. I'll just note that in the minutes we've got Meredith and Kerry on the present list, but also apologies. So for the secretarial noting that they were apologies for that meeting and not present. Any matters arising from the minutes? Thank you, Councillor Semmel.
On page 8 of 32, Mr. Chairman, in the second bullet point, I just think it needs to be made just slight correction, because it says regarding the point of the report, the emissions trading scheme differ for each class of land. And a class of land is whether it's class 6, 7, 8 or 9. It's actually not the class of land. So I think it might be the obligations with respect to the planting on the land rather than the class of land. Because class of land is a recognised status of land, and that is not what the ETS is. Affects it. The ETS is around the plantings on the land. So I just like the word class removed, and I'm happy for council officers to come up with another word, but that is not the ETS is not about your class of land. It's about your planting on the land.
All right, I see Michelle noting that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I had something too. Oh, sorry, Kerry. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Just as someone who wasn't present, just reading 10.11, discussions included, I struggled to understand the last sentence. So perhaps it might make sense to those of you who are here, but if it doesn't, could it be clarified? Because I certainly struggled to, sorry, just one, 5, page 5, 10.1.1.
Weather event.
So the last sentence, as of 30th June 2022, funding will be lost from 88% to 68%, as the 68% funding of 10 million must be spent before the full 88% can be given. I just don't know what that means. Yeah. What does it make sense? Which is what? We have to spend the $10 million.
Through you, Chair, would you like me to answer?
David will give us an explanation. Yeah. Hang on, David's going to give us an explanation. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Chair. So through you, Chair, what we'll be talking about is we have to spend the funding that we have already been given before we're able to go through into the next part of it. And if we don't spend it, then it does drop back down. But we're not able to draw anything down until we've got the funding spent that we've already got in front of us. But then also that it will drop as we go through into the new financial year. So that's why the push is to get the work done now before it goes through to the next financial year.
So just clarifying, the bit that we're pushing to get done is the 10 million.
Through you, Chair, yes.
And I just said something, sorry, I didn't note the page, but it's got the solid waste contract, it's got a June 22 expiry and it had to, there was going to be discussions about extending that. Do you know where we've got June 22 is quite close?
So through you, Chair, we have a meeting with Waste Management to discuss that later on this afternoon, and that's talking about the rollover. They have a 1-year extension left on that contract that they're looking to exercise, and we're just working through what that looks like with them at the moment.
Thanks, David. Nothing further on the minutes? Yeah.
Around that same thing. So will, thank you through the chair to Mr. Wilson. Will we have something in place then if we have to have the discussions by the end of June? Are you expecting an outcome, please?
Through you, Chair, absolutely. We're expecting to carry on business as usual with Waste Management. It's a cordial relationship. It's more around the timeframes for how long that's going to be and what that looks like going forward from there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did we have movers and Councillor Brown?
Apologies for being late. Just regarding the waste, I did, thank you, Councillor Seymour. Just the composting workshops that are subsidised, do they have a good turnout? Like we've seen 38% of green waste. Do we know the numbers, statistics of people who are actively working to lessen waste going into landfills through those subsidised workshops? I don't know who to ask that question to. But.
So through the Chair, the waste workshops are something we put through as part of our waste reporting that comes through in the quarterly reports. We'll make sure that that's put in part of the next quarterly report that comes through.
This was awesome.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Sheldrake, second by Councillor Seymour. Nothing further. All those in favour? Against? Carried. All right. We've got the governance work action sheet. Sorry, page 9. Yeah, just there's a few on the governance plan there that don't have dates attached to them.
Governance plan, Mr. Chairman, I just have a query about the first item. And it notes this is the Uawa Hikawai catchment scientific bore drilling, and I've been familiar and involved with what's going on. The due date for the final report for the Bay Geological is May, and I realise it takes a few weeks to get to a council agenda, but do council officers have that report that was due on the 17th of May?
It's coming to the next operations meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Con. So the answer is yes, council officers do have it.
We do have it.
Probably incomplete if it's coming to next meetings.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Just a few of those, can we just get new due dates, please? Because
Yeah.
the second one and the last two have dates that were in March. So if we can just update when we expect to see that. Thank you.
All right. Nothing more on the governance work plan. No leave of absence, no acknowledgements and tributes. And we do have a petition, is it, from David Clark on the Te Ara River. Welcome, David. I do have to declare an interest because my wife in her youth spent her days going to school by crossing a tree which was over the Te Ara River.
There was still plenty there.
Yeah. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Some apologies. I've got 3 or 4 F2 Road supporters, landowners, ratepayers back at the room have arrived too. Apologies from Dan Griffin, the Hudsons, Rick Shaggs. There's a couple of others there, but they're the main ones. Slides there. And probably most people didn't know that the Te Arai River overflowed during that flood fresh the other day to the extent that it did on the storm of the 24th of March. The overflow occurred on the flats at Papatū Station over a 200 or 300 metre section of the riverbank. This is where it came across the flats at Papatū. This is right at the top end of the Papatū Road. Jamie Graham's orchard is. Okay. Good. Jamie Graham's orange orchards right to the right-hand side. Oh, sorry, left-hand side behind the shelter there. The overflow came across the flats. There was unharvested and harvested paddocks there. There's a large paddock of seed maize that wasn't able to be harvested. Came through four orange orchards, 2 kiwi fruit orchards, 3 domestic properties, to a level of about 0.8 of a metre of fast flowing water. Went through kiwi fruit. I think it delayed the harvest of that kiwi fruit block by 2 or 3 weeks because they couldn't get in. You can see the silt there. That's the river, or the overflow coming down the Papatū Road into the start of the Whakatuna stream or drain. And that's the kiwi fruit orchard there that's been affected.
Is that part of the road? Is that part of the road?
That would be from the road, yes. The thing was that it all happened at night and most of it was gone by the morning. I think that's what's sort of gone under the radar there a bit, that it was a flash flood, and the Te Arai is a nasty little creek that comes up very quickly, drains a big valley and can go down quite quickly. You can see the tide mark on the kiwi fruit shelter there. That's a metre or whatever, but that's the height of the water that's been through. These are the Hudson's orchard there with newly planted oranges there that have been swept and they've had to be re-established. The one on the left is, on the right is around their house. Again, it's been quite difficult getting photos that have portrayed it. This is coming across the road into Dan Griffin's paddocks. There's a bottleneck there at the top of the Karakia road. It comes in where the Whakatuna comes through. This is the Hudson's, sorry, the people, but around their house there was some voice there, but it doesn't seem to come through. Had a flood garage. When I went up there, it was a rainy day and there was silt all around the through the garage, through the house. This is their yard onto the road and the garage full of silt from the flow. That's their farm. That's the kiwi fruit orchard at the back there that the water had come through. Fence is damaged. The flow continued by the way of the Whakatuna drain through maize crops, harvested crops, pasture until it ponded at Oakley Station and drained back into the Whakatuna under the State Highway 2 bridge. Oakley Station and Ronkakara had about 135 hectares of crop and cropping land underwater. That hatched area to the top of the farm map there was all underwater, fast flowing water coming through standing maize crops. This is a video from the state highway of paddock at Opu. There's a video there, Heather.
did it stay like that?
Day and a half by the time it came through. It wasn't a big flood for the Tiara River, although it was a short, sharp incident. One of the main reasons the river overflowed is absolutely clogged with willows. It's hard to see how. This is in the middle of the river, and it's slowing the flow down and it's backing up, hence it overflowed. And this is all along the length of the river. Trees. Picture on the left is a big log jam sitting in the river, hung up in big trees. And then there's on the right hand side, there's just scrub or young willow trees. And it's all holding the river, the flow of the river up. Backing up is another log jam hung up in trees. You can see that willows in the background there that all the way up. These are willows in the flow, and if they're left, they'll form big trees and cause more problems. Another log jam. See the trees that are hanging up the log jam, and just backing everything up. On down the river, there's just anywhere you go, there's just trees growing in the flood stream. It just goes on and on. There's a gang that's been pulled off a job in the Waipawa River scheme. Just in the last week, they've been given about $100,000 to spend before the end of the month, which is impossible. Whether it's a summer job, not a winter job. The 30-foot trees that they're cutting out of the flood stream there. That's the size of the logs that they're cutting and poisoning. Those are macaques in the middle of the thing. Those are 30-year-old trees. This is in the lower reaches, which is in the Waipawa flood scheme. And I think that's why they pulled out of the Ormond job and been put into this area. It's the lower area, which is, I guess, causing less problems than the upper area. The river's divided into two management areas, or two rated areas. I won't call them managed areas because they're not being managed. There's the lower end, which is the mouth of the Arai to what was known as Karanga's Cowshed. It's now Simon Roberts kiwi fruit orchard almost at the top of the Papatū Road. And that's the Waipawa flood control scheme. Hence, I think this is why this machinery has been dropped in there. But no plan. It's just knee-jerk stuff. It's great that it's there, but there's no plan. The top end from Karanga's is up to the Ray Bridge, is the Manawhaki drainage area. There's $100,000 there, evidently. It maintains a whole list of drains, 15 drains through there. And a single line there is Tiara River Drain, whatever that is. It's a river, not a drain. It hasn't had any money spent on it for 35 years, 37 years, evidently. Hard to read, but been in communication with David Peacock, who's a previous GDC engineer. His view from the photos I've been sending, and it doesn't look to have been any substantial willow management in this river since it was cleared in 1985, 37 years ago. Following this clearance, there was a maintenance district set up about 1991. In the late 90s, this maintenance district was included in the GDC asset management plan for rivers and drains. It seems as though the river management was outsourced to Fulton and Hogan. And I think at this point, the GDC's lost control of the management of the river system. No money's been spent in that whole period. After extensive searches, in the GDC files and archives, it turns out there's not a management plan for the Te Ara River. Therefore, there's no budget, no work being done or even planned. It was unbelievable that the whole river system is not being managed by the Gisborne District Council. And I've spoken to Fulton Hogan guys, and they've said there's been no work done by them in the river apart from some minor layering work on some corners. It was an ecological disaster on a large scale with total infestation of willows which are clogging the river, causing the river to back up and overflow through domestic properties, orchards and crops. A survey of a section of the river was done by Nick Gordon to the GDC in February this year. He identified the magnitude of the problem, but didn't do the full survey of the full river. Nick identified critical restrictions in the river downstream of the overflow, which needed to be cleared urgently. There needs to be funds allocated to this urgent work. Management plan needs to be instigated immediately for this whole river system with urgent work planned immediately. There's that blue oval there is where the river's overflowed. It's come down through the flats, through the orange orchard, through the kiwi fruit orchard, around the base of the hills there into the Potatuta scheme. These are areas that Nick has identified as critical areas that need urgent work. You see all the way up here, there's trees across the river, as your wife would have. They're probably still the same trees. The length of the river from the Ray Bridge to the State Highway Bridge is approximately 18 kilometres times 2, so there's 36 kilometres of banks, with a very large proportion of this 18 kilometres is clogged with willows. There's a huge job worth several $100,000, if not millions. Unless it's planned and managed, this river will flood again, and there's the potential to cause some hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars worth of crops and domestic damage. And where do we start? And I don't understand how a river system has fallen through the cracks of the management of the Gisborne District Council. And that's what's happened. It's fallen through. Different managers, different people in and out all the time. No one's picked up the whole job. And this is where we've ended up. I've been offered a meeting with Dave Wilson on the ground and the flood control manager following this meeting. And it'd be really good to have some city councillors at this meeting to understand the problem and affected landowners on the ground, and rural councillors as well, if they want to be there as well. But I'll organise the rate or the landowners, ratepayers there if people want to be on the ground with Dave Wilson, and we'll have a look at this job. I think there needs to be a community group or someone liaising, coordinating this job. I just don't want it to go to the council and end up in the deep dark hole again and nothing happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just to let you know that councillors may have some questions for you, but we won't be debating at this stage, but they may want some questions.
Right. Well, any questions?
Yeah.
I assume all as well as the self-serve.
Yes, I guess, and it's sort of layering effect of twigs rooting, and no, I don't think anything's been planted. Yeah. So.
Supplementary, Mr. Chairman. Why has someone not raised this issue and gone to look at the council over it?
Well, I've been at my section. I've had a gang in about a month ago. It's taken me 4 years to get the gang in. It's done a 220 metre section of my property, my boundary. I've been concerned about. I don't know. It's just one of these things that just goes on and everyone gets on with their job. But, assume someone's got a plan, and that's sort of what's happened is we've realised no one's got a plan, and nothing's been happening.
Your worship, and then councillor Foster.
Thank you for that, David, and also thank you for, usually people would ask in the end, so what will happen next? You've already organised what will happen next, but the question I have is, you alluded to the fact that Nick came and did some work and highlighted some areas there. Was that in response to you reaching out, or was there some work happening there?
I think his visit in February
Because you emailed
came
me
through the
then,
council.
yes, and we passed it on to them. So that was response to your first.
Yes, and I got he and Mangala out on the ground with Pepsi Station following the flood so that they could identify where the river came out, that came over the banks, and what the problem was downstream.
Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you. Yeah, serious issue. My question is, have you had any liaison with Ronfakata? Because you've identified that they've got land there and cropping there. And they'll have whanua or the area of the stream there. So has there been any liaison with them?
Yep. I've approached them 5 times as a rahui on any new work. They don't seem to want to talk to anybody. Don't seem to want to get involved. So we take that up.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Geiger-Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for bringing this to our attention today. I just wanted, in our recent CDM talks, we're talking about these 1 in 100 events, which are becoming more frequent. So is this event, I mean, you've mentioned it kind of went under the radar, but it was significant to those it impacted. Are you seeing these events? Because we are aware now we're seeing them, you know, kind of more regularly. So we need to get to an action plan now because of climate change, I guess, but is this an event that you're starting to see more of perhaps happening?
I spoke to the manager of Papatū Station. He said he's been there for 8 years. I think this is the 5th time it's come through in 8 years. This would be the more major one. It's happened. Yeah, but we need to have the river able to cope with the flow that's coming down. That's the problem. It's clogging up.
Right, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, mentions up there that the willows were dealt with roughly 37 years ago. I presume that was in the wake of Bowler, because I know a lot at our way had spray essentially flown right up the waterways, clearing all the willows in the wake of Bowler, because Bowler highlighted what an issue the willows were. The issue, I guess, we have a plan that makes it reasonably difficult to clear vegetation in waterways. You need resource consent, you need to remove all the debris, you need it's not a simple process. Do you think that that process is partly what's holding it up, or is it simply the fact that someone should have been doing it and hasn't been done?
I don't think I said the river had been cleared in 1985, and I'm assuming that was following the Ngātapu flood. That was pre-Bowler. Yeah. Part of the problem, yes, clearing, I agree, Kerry, they used to get into the riverbed and cut the logs into sections and leave them there, but the section that doesn't seem to be an option anymore. They had a long reach digger. The section on my property that was cleared a month or so ago, they had a long reach digger that was pulling logs out of the river and stacking them on the riverbank up out of the way. The access into the river to do that is going to be more and more difficult. Some areas are quite simple to get diggers in the section opposite the Milton Vineyard winery that has been cleared at the moment, has a platform and they've got a digger and they have to cut a road in, and it's quite simple, but a lot of the areas just almost impossible to get machinery down into the riverbed to clear the logs out of the riverbed, and that's going to be the major problem. But the bigger, the longer it's left, the bigger the trees, the bigger the job.
All right, thanks very much for that. I see. Oh, sorry, Councillor Faulkner.
Thank you. Good morning, David. Thank you so much for bringing this to the attention of us here in Council. My question to you is a comment that you made very early in your presentation around the involvement of a potential community group. Obviously, I'm not going to, at this stage, it's too early to call it a catchment group, but I do wonder, do you feel you have the support in your area to develop an effective catchment group that could then feed into a lot of the regulatory frameworks that we work with here, be they resource management, planning, productive soils, et cetera, et cetera?
I guess we have to. There is, yes, yeah. There's, as I say, there's some apologies today, people who don't want to get here, but I've found very, very concerned landowners, ratepayers up the Papatū Road, that I'm sure there's enough concern there that we could get a group together. Just depends on how much work we have to do.
Yeah. Right, thanks for that. As the Mayor said, there is an action there, and I'll liaise with David and I'll get out and have a look at it as well. So, and I think a report will come back to council about the matter.
And you'll advise council when you have the meeting set up, so that those who are interested can come, David.
Yes, I'll talk to Dave Wilson. Yeah.
All right, thanks for that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I don't know how the others feel, but given that he's made the appeal, the urgency of work needing to be done and the potential for damage, i.e. the crops and the other issues there, I think we should, or you should as the chair, demand some urgency from staff over this.
Yeah, well, the matter is we're going to visit it quite quickly,
Yeah,
I would say. And,
thank you.
a report will come back here sooner rather than later.
Through you, Chair. So we appreciate Mr. Clark's submission and presentation. And the best we can do is obviously with that site meeting, make that happen, get out there on site, and we'll be reporting back to council.
Right. Thank you. Okay, there's no extraordinary business, no notices of motion, no notice of motion, and no adjourned business. So we'll go to our reports, page 15.
Through you, Chair, I'll welcome Tyler up to present on the Tokomaru Bay National Play Park.
Welcome, Tyler.
Not a new issue, but the purpose of today's report really was to inform council on the process that's being followed to identify land suitable for a new community park in Tokomaru Bay. We're all aware that the June 2021 flood event caused the rapid acceleration of an ongoing issue, which was the steady northward migration of the Mangahawini River, therefore requiring the removal of the community playground. As a short-term solution, that community playground was placed at Hatiarangi School through an agreement with the board of trustees there to open it for community use outside of school hours. From a strategic standpoint, though, we do believe that there's ample justification for a new community park. The playground that we can provide at the school is slightly different to a community park in that it's truly permanently open. It's a piece of tourism infrastructure, and it's also a democratic space. You know, it's a place that community can contribute to, can always access. So there are a lot of strategies that we have that would hint at the need for a new community park, and there is justification for that being seen as a destination park. The community facility strategy play spaces plan does note that there's a lack of destination parks on the coast. Those are all concentrated in Gisborne City currently. There is good reason to see Tokomaru Bay as a location for that. It's a central area. It's a place where a lot of people pass through. It would be accessible to a wide range of community because of the fact that people are often traveling up and down State Highway 35 and would get to enjoy an asset in that place. So as a medium to long-term solution, we've undertaken some land options analysis to identify whether there's a piece of ideally council-owned land or privately owned land which would be suitable for a new community playground of scale that could allow it to be a destination park. There's obviously a lot of future decision points that we have to reach, and this is a point in time to kind of explain where we're at. We have had some land options analysis completed. Some of it is public and some of it is private, so there's an element of commercial sensitivity to that. Our next steps from here are really to enter into consultation with mana whenua around the suitability of some of those sites. Following that, we would expect there'd be a level of wider community consultation before we come back to councillors with a proposal if and how we can proceed in that space. Obviously, the elephant in the room is the recent extreme climate events in Tokomaru Bay. And yeah, we are watching really closely a few pieces of work that are sitting in the climate change portfolio, particularly NIWA's impact on assets report and the regional climate risk assessment. Because, especially prudent in this case, we need to find an absolutely future-proof piece of land for a piece of infrastructure that would be significant. And finally, obviously looking at the timeframes, we would be thinking if we can identify a suitable piece of land and councillors have an appetite for the designation of a destination park, this would probably align quite well for the needs. So the time frame that we anticipate, we have sort of lost a month, but we're still hoping that we can consult with mana whenua, then community, before coming back to councillors in September in an ideal world. But it is now a tighter time frame than when I wrote that down.
So just if I can just get some clarity around that double consultation, if you like, just the efficiency and practicality of going to mana whenua and then going to the community. Essentially, the community is mana whenua. Why are we doing it twice? Why can't we sort of wrap it into one consultation?
Yes, through the chair, I do think it's almost a two-stage consultation. One is an integrity piece around the partnership, and then the second is that wider kind of democratic process around community.
Councillor Sheldrake, Councillor Walshnut, Councillor Wharehere. Councillor.
Thank you. I'd like you to expand on a destination park. If I arrive at it, what's going to be there? What am I going to do? Do I have to bring my toys with me? Is it all laid on? Is it a managed facility? Yeah, expand on what you mean actually by destination park.
Through the chair, I think that there isn't one definition there isn't one set of infrastructure for a destination park, but what a destination park should achieve is something that draws users from a really large catchment, that it is of a scale like you would find at the adventure playground or the botanical gardens, somewhere where people across the region would want to visit because it has a single point of difference and a purpose, and it has infrastructure to a scale which can keep people busy for a half day or a day. So it might be the kind of place where you find a really nice playground, potentially a bespoke or a different playground. It might be a place where you have some sport or recreation infrastructure to keep kids entertained in that space of time as well.
Just a small slide. Councillor Walshnut.
First of all, I'm really happy to see the coast identified in this way. There, as you've rightly highlighted, there's not a lot there that would, admirably compare to what we have in town, and it certainly gets a hell of a lot of through traffic. If you just stop and get a pie, it's amazing how busy the road is. When I just to Councillor Sheldrake's point, when I think of a destination park, I think of the Wairoa one, because I cannot drive past there without my youngest going, "Give me please stop." So I think it'll be an amazing thing for the township in particular. I note that there's no budget attached to it, and so my question is, I think before we go out to consultation, because the community's imagination will be as big as you let it be, and I'm really mindful of not letting our community have expectations which we then don't meet. So I do think it's important to, when we're having these consultations, to frame it somehow. It's not framed in the report. Destination park to me could literally be, it could be Splash Planet, it could be anything. Yeah, I'm mindful of letting, while I welcome it, I really want to make sure that we do the process right and ensure that the scope that our community is envisaging is within what we have the ability to deliver. So that would be my feedback on that. But I know it's a noting report, but I'm happy to move the paper. It's I think something that will be certainly very welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Wharehenge.
Ai te tuatai nei rata mi nunu ki a koe te rangatira I te hea mana mo tō mihi mai ki a mātou I roto te reo rangatira, he whakaro rangatira tēnā he hika nei rata mi nunu ki a koe Andy. Also meeting to us this morning. In regards to this, I am absolutely supportive of Te Ako or Tokomaru having a destination playground, and for the sole reason for a major reason, it's only one reason, but it's something that happens at Tokomaru often. When we take lots of rangatahi or children from here up the coast, Tokomaru is usually the place that we would stop because it has ample bus parking, ample parking for multiple vans, a toilet there, something to occupy the kids or rangatahi while we maybe stop there for lunch and all of those kinds of things. So in my mind, a destination park at Tokomaru actually makes a lot of sense. I know that in my journeys up there with my kids' kura, we've utilised Tokomaru lots in regards to being a destination for us to have lunch at, actually, before we continued all the rest of the way up the coast. So absolutely endorse the thinking. And I am heartened to hear the kind of pre-thinking in regards to climate change. Some of the pre-thinking that I'd also like us to consider as well is the ability to be able to have those big vehicles, the buses, the vans, etc., there, in order to be able to utilize that space wider. I know I'm getting a bit kind of into the detail, but I just want to remind us of what made that current space really, really valuable to whānau that connect to the coast that maybe live in the city. And that was something that was really, really valuable. Being able to have our bus drivers just park up and confidently know that they're going to be able to turn around without having to squeeze between lots of really closely parked cars and things like that. So the space availability for vehicles was really valuable. I like the kōrero actually around us speaking with mana whenua. As we all know, ngā hapu o Tokomaru Ako have been quite vocal in their conversations with us, and I'm sure that they'll have a lot to say in regards to this. So I think that's a great idea. Yeah, awesome paper, and I'm happy to move.
It's been moved by Councillor Worsnop, so we'll be seconding that. Councillor Seymour.
Chairman, I'd just like to reflect back that it isn't that long ago that this council, probably only 3 or 4 years, looked for an alternative site, because we do realise that the site was at risk, and it has been diminished in the last 5 years until ultimately the site was simply washed away. And whatever you call it, I do think we need to be very careful about what we do, what expectations we do set up. And I was party to some really great consultation with all of the Tokomaru Bay community who chose to take part over a long period of time, and council officers from in here as we did the township plan about 5 years ago. And we heard from the community what they were looking for, and the community is saying they would like a meeting. So as soon as you've had your mana whenua meeting, we would like to have a community meeting, because the community are missing the opportunity to be a part of the discussions which has happened in the past. Because I understand there are some meetings happening every second week at the rugby club rooms, but that doesn't include all of those in the community who used to meet at the Haven. So we do want to see the Haven meetings happen again, and that can be made to happen with only a couple of weeks' notice. So, and I also want to see, it wasn't mentioned in your kōrero, that we need to put back the barbecue, because that was something that we achieved for Tokomaru Bay, and the barbecue is gone and is not able to be implemented where this playground park is now. For the councillors who might not have seen it, Mayor Stoltz and I did attend when it was reopened, and it is available to all the children when the rugby sports club is being used, because it's right there between the school and the rugby club. And so it is very available to children to use. And a good arrangement has been arrived at. And what was really satisfying was that the water didn't go into it the last time, because it's raised about that high. And as you'll see in the report, one of the forestry companies helped to get it re-established. And that lip on the actual chip that the park equipment sits on was just enough to keep the water and silt out of it. So it just didn't get up high enough to go through the playground, which was great. So there's quite a few things we need to talk about. We need to talk as you plan with Mana Whenua, but we must talk with the community quite soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Robinson, Foster, Biddy. Councillor Robinson.
Thanks for the report, Tyler. Does raise a few questions for me. Firstly, the value of the property, value of the playground that was relocated to the school. The report says in paragraph 10 that it may stay there. I'm assuming implicitly it may not stay there, but what was the value of all that equipment? So I imagine it wouldn't, sorry? Well, yeah, but if we had to replace it like for like, what was the value of it?
Through you, the chair, the new equipment that was purchased was around 40k, with a contribution from one of the forestry companies to support the new softball for that school playground facility. It is there with an MOU arrangement that it remains at that site. Council has a responsibility to maintain it while we don't yet have an alternative community playground, if that answers your question.
So are you telling us that when the destination park, even when it's built, that equipment will stay at the school under the MOU?
Correct.
Okay, that's different to what's said at paragraph 10, which says it may decide to transfer ownership of the play equipment to the school. From a flood, inundation, sea level rise perspective, how safe is the township itself of Tokomaru Bay? Because it is quite flat. I mean, is there going to be a site which is long-term actually going to be safe?
Through the chair, that's my biggest concern in this process, and that's why we are watching so closely those two reports that are in the climate change program.
Okay, and then I don't understand why you'd be at the stage of having discussions with private landowners or identifying sites when the mahi is still to be completed around climate change, because some of those sites may not be viable. And then on all of that, as identified by two other councillors, there's an expectation, and it's identified in the risk part of that report, that there's no budget allocated to this. And we raise the community's expectations. It almost feels like we've got the horse before the cart. I mean, I'd support the concept, but I'm a bit confused by the way we're going about it. That's my concern.
Through you, Chair. So this whole situation has come about because the playground was lost as a result of a large storm event. So we have essentially lost the community playground. So the short-term option was to relocate to the school, and that was a really suitable short-term solution. But in the long term, the community still doesn't have a community playground. So that is, it's a fact, and we need to investigate how we reinstate that. So I guess what we are talking to is, and very carefully trying to navigate the challenges around climate change and sea level rise and what we know, with progressing and understanding what the community wants in order to have a solution for the long term. And I know everything takes time. So this will take some time to even understand what we want for that future destination playground.
Okay.
I guess I just wanted to say, having seen some of Tyler's previous work and involvement in our community around the space, I'm very, very confident that that we will get there in this whole framework. I think the timing of this is actually probably works for the Mana Whenua, particularly the hapu, with all that they are working towards in the region of Tokomaru. So I think that albeit there's little kind of, park happening in that space. I was in Tokomaru on the weekend and, it's working in that space. But of course, this is long-term planning, which around NIWA's report until we know all that horse before cart dialogue, we are. But because in my mind, I was thinking maybe the destination is the maunga. So we have a gondola, but at the end of the day, we can dream big. But with the mana whenua, of course, and the community, I'm sure they'll come together and create something special for that part of the storytelling, and the narrative will be part of, I believe, what this destination will be about. So thank you so much for all the work in this space currently. But yeah, we know it's not easy in the timing and weather conditions and all, but we're with you. Kia ora.
Okay, well, thanks for that. So it's just a note of report, and it's given us an idea of progress in that matter. It's been moved by Councillor Worsnop and seconded by Councillor Wharehinga. No further matters? All those in favour? It's carried. Thanks, Tyler. All right, page 22, we've got the annual report on control policy and practices. Welcome. 22. Oh, so we've all had a look at the report there. Got anything you wanted to steer us at, or?
No, sorry, through chair. No, I think it's sort of self-explanatory what's there. Any questions, I'm happy to answer.
So those changes from the workshop have not been indicated yet, especially around the rural dogs.
No, they haven't been changed as yet. But on that subject, I'm happy to talk to people about it, and I agree in some of the spaces that were talked about in the workshop, but there are some concerns around it for me as well.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to. Thank you. I'm happy to move the paper, recognising that this is the 2021 report, so it's retrospective. It doesn't take into account decisions that or discussions that we've had. I just wanted to thank the team for the work that they do in this area, because it is really challenging, and on a limited number of resources, I've no doubt. We can all read the numbers, we can all read the report. It is the reality of this region, unfortunately, that there's a huge amount of work for our dog control team and some not so responsible dog owners, but we thank the team for the work they do, for the public that alert you to things that need to be followed up on. And I think we've done, for the number of dogs we have, you do really well that we don't have many really nasty incidents. So I'm happy to move the report, and thank you for the work that's done in that area across the whole district.
Thank you. Councillor Wharehinga.
I'm happy to second, Mr. Chair. Also want to echo the sentiments by Councillor Seymour. Awesome work. Yeah, since day one of being a councillor, I've been all about the dog team and all about dog control and things like that. Yeah, at first, kind of as a mosquito in the air, I guess, of the dog team. But now, like, I really admire the work, that's been happening in there. Huge advocate. So you just wanted to echo the sentiment shared by Councillor Seymour.
Thank you. Councillor Worsnop.
Thank you. So yeah, once again, thanks for the report. My question is around, and I think I asked it last year, but I can't remember what the answer was, so hopefully it's not the same answer. But given that we've got 90 attacks on stock or people and 18 who have been subject to investigation for welfare issues, but we have no probationary owners, what does it take to become a probationary owner?
Funny, I was looking at that thinking someone was going to ask me that. So we've had one probationary owner in the last 4 or 5 years, and that person has only just come off. So basically, that's the last resort before we disqualify. If we don't make them a probationary officer, they have to go through dog education, they, in that time, they're not allowed any more dogs than what they already have. So it's just a last resort, and it's a way of educating them, or they fail and they go to disqualified owner.
Supplementary to that, I know that we have a bylaw review up and coming. Is there a threshold that we don't currently have that is before a last resort, but is more than here's a fine, pay it, go away? Because, I mean, to my mind, and I know in the mind of our community, an attack on stock or people is really serious, possibly beyond simply paying a fine, you know, and I know we do a lot of education, etc. But to what extent are those attacks? Are they all one-offs? Are they all, you know, different people every time? Or are there instances where actually that same owner is the person, you know, they've more than once been responsible for a dog that's had an attack?
Through the chair, yeah, good question. The probably didn't explain myself quite correctly. So before you get to that probationary or disqualified, most of the times with these attacks and that, we've taken the dog and destroyed, or as far as stock is concerned, the farmer has shot the dog. So it takes that problem away. Now and then, and Councillor Burdett will know he's had problems with a repeat offender, but it's not a common thing over our district. Most of the time, if it's attacked a person, we take the dog, and our aim is, if it's attacked a person or it's taken stock, is to educate the owner that this is not good enough, we're going to destroy the dog. That's our outcome.
So is it something that the bylaw could look at? Because I know for the sake of the animals, it's not really ideal if that person can then just go and get another one. Because it's not the dog's fault, right? We all know that. And for me personally, I know having a dog, for some people, having a dog destroyed is not that big a deal, you know, and I wish that it was. But for me, I'd like to see someone who has a dog destroyed, I'd like to see them have to jump through a hoop before they get another dog. Because I don't think it's fair on the dog and it's not fair on the community. And I know that this is not the paper to address that, but I know that this is work that you do every day and you see this and you deal with this. So I hope that we can, through the bylaw, make life a little bit easier for dogs of the future and for our community and for yourselves. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes, then Councillor Robertson, then Councillor Foster, then Councillor Sheldrake, then Councillor Arai Brown. Councillor Hughes.
Magandang Umaga from Manila. So my question is just around the number of, just trying to find it, impounded dogs and infringement notices. How many of those relate to working dogs? Or roughly what proportion?
Through the chair, I mean, it's totally obvious to this committee that through working dogs, there might be one or two. That would be it. You know, yeah.
So yeah, just with my user pays hat on, I've just done some quick count. So it looks like from the figures given, that ordinary dog owners pay about 446,000 of fees, and working dog owners pay about 205,000. Yeah, just leaving that on the table.
It's through the chair. That's a good question, and yeah, back to the workshop where we talked about farmers and the cost of paying them. But I'm just wondering if the farmer that's going to pay me because I was up at 3:30 this morning getting stock off the road, is that a different cost?
Excellent. Councillor Robinson.
Thanks. My line of questioning is very similar to that raised by Councillor Worsnop, and it's not really evident from the report what the outcomes had been for some of the more serious incidents, that the 90 odd, and maybe for next year or next time you do this report for the reader, it would be much more helpful if we could actually see The lawyer immediately went to see what happened to prosecutions, and it said there were no prosecutions arising, which is so disappointing because somewhere out there a lawyer is not getting work. But we had 90 serious incidences of either attacking stock or attacking people, and the report didn't say to me exactly what those outcomes were for those 90, and that's the information that our community really, really cares about. You know, the high-end, very visual dog attacks, they want to know that we've got good outcomes in those incidents, and this report didn't clearly say that to me, so therefore I'm assuming it won't be saying that to the public.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the most annoying things in any community is barking dogs. And I see there's a slight increase in barking dogs, but there's also an increase in general dog complaints. What's a general dog complaint? Does that include barking dogs? Now, is there something separate to barking dogs? Pardon? Desecrating. Yeah, but actually I'm wielding a lot of complaints from the Einstein Street area of barking dogs at the moment, and they don't seem to be having much joy. But and I see here we've got no incidents of failure to comply with barking dogs with abatement notices. So obviously there hasn't been any abatement notices handed out, or has there, or have they been abided by? Or what's the process with a barking dog in a neighbourhood, annoying a neighbourhood? You know, because I'm just at the moment I'm getting a lot of calls from this particular area about some really annoying dogs that are going all the time. So I don't know if you've heard about it, but and what's the process with barking dogs? What would you be doing with complaints?
Through the chair. So barking dogs are my thorn as well. One of the hardest complaints to solve. But what it does say is that what's a nuisance to one person is maybe not to another, and it is the animal control officer that determines whether that is a nuisance. As far as an abatement notice goes or removal of that dog goes, that would have to be an ongoing situation. And as far as I'm very well aware of what you're talking about. And we have been there about 9 times now, and only twice have the dogs been barking when we are there. So for us to say they're a nuisance to the community, it's very hard to say that when they're only barking one. And both times we've talked to the owner and they have corrected, and they are under directions at the moment on what needs to be done.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon.
Thank you. I think I remember from the previous report, what's the relationship do we have with the SPCA? I see there's 0 dogs picked up by the SPCA, and I've got another question too. So what's our, do we have a working relationship with them? Or?
Through the chair, our working relationship with the SPCA is not great at the moment. We do have a good working relationship with the inspector out there that we are in contact on a weekly basis, probably for jobs that are going on around. There's lots of reasons why we don't have that relationship.
Okay. Just a subsequent one. I hate seeing that euthanized 202 dogs, you know. So if a little Ted arrives at your kennel, how long is it before he's euthanized if no one's interested in
so through the chair, yeah, there's 202 dogs that were euthanized in 21, but they're not dogs that are suitable for rehoming. So they are assessed by us. I have 50 years experience with dogs. I was a farm manager for 20 odd years, so I know what a dog is, and I'm not prepared to put a dog back in the community that I'm going to have to deal with next week because it's in little Tommy across the road.
Fine. Thank you.
Councillor Arai.
Thank you. And again, thank you for all the mahi in this place. I know, well, I'm only asking this question because I visited a resident who had to give over a dog because it wasn't in their tenancy to have one. And it was disappointing because it was well loved and all. But as I walked to their whare, there was a home with 4 dogs on it. So I know that people can have a special license, but in the urban area, is there a limit to how many dogs a person can have? Like we talk about the cat lady, but you know, the dog people, can they have as many as they want? Because I got to pay for them.
So through the chair, yeah, once I've got that permit, there's no limit on it. I think there should be in town, especially because it does come a problem with barking and not only that, feces and all that sort of stuff.
So would that require a policy respect to council deciding that? As I would assume that, yeah, just that I have been to a few properties where there's more than 4 dogs. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Councillor Biddy. Microphone, Bill.
Do we have sufficient staff to deal with animal control, dog registration, worrying north of Toko, the northern area of the Yalcon? Council, do we have sufficient staff on the ground to deal with it?
Through the chair, so I talk about district, I don't talk about north of Tokomaru Bay because we've got to look at it as a team. We don't, as a team, we probably don't have enough staff. As far as saying, have we got enough staff on the coast? I think we do have enough staff on there for the amount of requests for services that they get. And it's a vast area. We're not going to put, well, I don't think that we should put staff up there that are going to be sitting around most of the time doing nothing. You know, we need value for money. So it's a hard question, and I know what you're asking, but it is a real hard question. At times we haven't got enough, at times we're right. So we've got to weigh that up as a business. So
supplementary, Mr. Chairman, without being rude, the different communities have dogs running there unregistered that cause a problem across the board. So that's why I asked the question. Look, I'm totally supportive of staff because I know how difficult the job they do is, and some of the abuse they get trying to do that job. All I'm trying to get recognized is that this is an ongoing problem, and it has been for a long time. And I believe we need to do something about it. This is my opinion.
Just a simple question. Why have we got 2 different categories of registered owners and superannuants? Why are they in 2 different categories?
as a selected owner.
Yeah, you've got superannuants and selected owner superannuants.
Yes, so through chair, the fact is we how we have an ordinary and we have a selected owner, right? So that works the same for a pensioner. That pensioner wants to be a selected pensioner owner, they need to abide or have the same facilities as the selected owner. They just get it cheaper than the selected owner. So they have to have a fenced area, and I have to be able to go to one of their doors without going through where their dog is kept.
Right. So if there's nothing further, that's been moved by Councillor Seymour and seconded by Councillor Wharenga. And just noting, so all those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, that's the open part of the meeting done. So we'll have a cup of coffee before we go into public excluded. Okay. Yeah. Moved by Councillor Seymour to go into public and seconded by Councillor